What is the biggest challenge you're going to have using this technique is your pride. That pride that we take in running these numbers is so useless. It's something that keeps you not making money, keeps you not closing deals because you're letting your ego drive your decision making when you should let actual facts and data and your buyers drive what you do. Here's the secret. Again, if you're not buying the house, you are never going to know if it's a good deal. The only person that determines whether you have a good deal or not is going to be your buyers. This training is about pricing your deals for ARVs without using ARVs and repairs. Now, like all the other calls, right, we're going to start off with mindset first. What is the biggest challenge you're going to have using this technique is your pride. As investors, we take a lot of pride in understanding and knowing what our numbers are, right? Being good at running comps, estimating repairs. The thing where this affects you the most is when it comes time to contracting deals or even putting them, offering them out to your buyers. And we're going to talk, I'm going to give you 5 tips on how to get all this things set up and how to figure this stuff out. But that pride that we take and running these numbers is so useless. It's something that keeps you not making money, keeps you not closing deals because you're letting your ego drive your decision making when you should let actual facts and data and your buyers drive what you do. Now, who is this for? This is for people that are going direct to sellers and you are wholesaling these properties. If you are a fix and flipper, buy and hold investors, then you most certainly need to know how to run your numbers because you're keeping the property. Any property I flip personally or I'm going to keep as a rental, I run all my numbers. I run my repairs, which are based on my contractors and how we manage our projects and how we source our materials. And I run the ARVs that I want to run that tend to be a little bit more conservative, not optimistic on what I think the market's going to do this summer. I do it on where the market is at right now. And conservatively, because this is a business. This is not a hobby, and I don't take guesses and bets, right? Now, as a wholesaler, I don't do any of those things. As a wholesaler, my opinion means jack. The only thing that matters when I'm doing deals is what do my buyers want. So my pride doesn't play a factor in any of these things. If you're going to have pride for anything, why don't you have pride for actually making money and closing deals? You know, just food for thought there. The next thing is you're too afraid what if the deal is bad, right? And it's like, well, if I don't run my numbers, then how do I know it's a good deal? Here's the secret. Again, if you're not buying the house, you are never going to know if it's a good deal. The only person that determines whether you have a good deal or not is going to be your buyers. They're the only ones that can determine whether or not you have a good deal. And it's not the 70% formula minus repairs and all that nonsense that's been outdated for over a decade. It's none of that. It's your buyers. They're the ones that are going to determine whether or not you have a good deal, which is so important for you to get your buyers first. And that's why we even covered that last week's training. So if you missed it, go on my YouTube and watch that replay. But it's not up to you to determine whether a deal is good or bad. Now, I'm in this training, I'm going to show you how we calculate and how we go over to determine whether or not we have a deal that's going to fit the market. And that's pretty much all I look for. And the last thing on the mindset piece is not wanting to lowball people. Now, there are these, I don't know what the hell they are. They call themselves investors. I don't think they invest at all. But they have these things on like, I'm going to teach you how to, submit lowball offers, right? And it's like, even the intention of submitting a lowball offer is very shitty, right? Because instead of focusing on structuring good deals, helping out the seller that you're speaking to, making sure you're providing a good deal to your buyers, you're focused on lowballing people. Like, that's just a terrible mindset to have altogether, right? So I don't focus on lowballing. I don't focus on any of those things. What I focus on is figuring out what the seller actually needs, not what they want. We're not in the business of giving our sellers what they want. We're in the business of giving sellers what they need. If they want something, hire a realtor. That's their whole business. Realtors are here to make, dreams come true for people. And God bless them, because I hate doing that shit, right? Listings, managing buyers, complete nightmare. Not a business that I like. As investors, we're in the business of giving sellers what they need. So it's a different model as far as how you contract deals, how you get everything going. Now, let's get into the actual meat of this whole thing. And again, guys, if you're watching live, you have any questions, drop them in the chat, because I will address them after the training. The formula, very basic formula on how you determine the value of a house. Here's the only question I ask myself. If I was to take this property in its current conditions, just as it is, right? Maybe clean out if it's full of junk and stuff like that, clean that stuff, but in its current condition, and I was to put it on the market right now, on the MLS, and I wanted it to sell within a week or two, what would I price it at? Okay? That's the only thing I look for. So why is it within a week or so, and what I will price it at? It's because that's what the market is telling me they will pay for that house. And like I showed you last week, our buyers are buying at those numbers. Our buyers are not buying at the 70% minus repairs. Those are not savvy buyers. Any buyer that tells you, well, I buy 70% deals, they don't know what the hell they're doing. Every buyer, I buy a lot of real estate. I don't care what the 70% formula is. I run my numbers. You understand? I know what my closing costs are. I know what my carrying costs are. I know what my listing fees are. I know what my cost is. And I run all my numbers backwards from there. It has nothing to do with any type of formula. You understand? So buyers that we built the list on, and again, the training is last week's, is buyers that if they were to buy this property, they will be buying off the MLS at that price that you're going to be listing it at. It's really that simple. Now, how do you, out of that, create an offer for your sellers? All we do in that situation, let's do a very basic number like 150. So the next thing you want to know is, what are the months of inventory in your area, right? So in a market with very low months of inventory, I would say 3 months or less. You can, if you say, hey, I was to put this property on the market for 150, that's what I will sell at, I will probably be pretty close to that 150 number. But if I'm in a market like San Antonio, that's 4, 5, 7 months of inventory in San Antonio, I would be like, all right, if I was to price at 150, it could sell. So what am I going to push it out to my buyers for? Probably at 140. I'm going to give them a bigger discount, because that bigger discount is going to make my buyers move quickly, right? And that's the whole point, is I want to close fast. I don't want to be sitting on these properties for weeks, right? So out of that 150, I'll go down to 140. That's what I'm going to be pushing it to my buyers for. Now, from that 140, I'm going to subtract what my wholesale fee is going to be, right? So I typically like no less than 30 grand. So I'm going to subtract 30 from there. That puts me at 110. Now I need some wiggle room, because one thing I've learned in 13 years is sellers want to feel like you had some flexibility and you didn't just lowball them and they, you didn't steal their home. They want to be able to feel like they kind of, like you earned the property and they earned their money. It's more psychological. If you want more on this, read the book Influence by Robert Cialdini. Excellent book, covers all that. So at 110 is pretty much where I would want to contract at. I'll probably start my offer at 98. That's where I would start my offer. And why 98 and not 100? When you start offers, and I don't want to make this a training about offers, but just real quick, when you start offers, you don't want to start them in round numbers. The same when you push it out to your buyers, you don't want to push them out at round numbers. Because when you do round numbers, the way the human mind works is somebody's going to look for the next round number, right? So if you start at 100, they're going to go to 105 or 110, right? The same as if you're pushing it out to your buyers and you push it out 140, they're going to want 130. But when you use, what I've learned is when you use these numbers of like 98, 97s, my personal favorites are 94, 98. No real reason, but the 4s and the 8s is just kind of where I'm at, right? So even if I wanted to offer 105, I offer 104. And the reason for that is because then when they want to counter, you go from 98 to like 101 maybe, right? Like you barely go up and you're keeping it in these weird numbers. So you're going to see if you do this, the sellers, they're not even going to beat you down like saying, oh, I want 110. They're going to be like, whoa, can you do like, 106? And like, it's funny, but like try this out and you're going to see how different your offers get accepted. And the same when you're pushing it out to your buyers. So the formula is just that. We're looking, the next thing was months of inventory. I want to see where the market is at. So if I'm at a higher months of inventory, 4+ months, I want to be a little conservative on what I'm going to push it out to my buyers. If I'm in a months of inventory of 3 or less months, then I could put it out more or less at that value that I feel is going to sell if I was to put it on the MLS. If any of this stuff is not making sense, drop a question in the comment section and I'll make sure to address it. Now, the next thing is when you're looking for comparables for this house. This comes up a lot. If you're looking for comparables for the house, what I look at is I sort of look at what's sold. I just don't care as much. What I care more about, again, this is as a wholesaler. As a fix and flipper, you should be looking at what sells, right? But as a wholesaler, what I look at is what is my competition at this moment? Because if I was to take this property, clean it up, put it on the MLS as is, who am I competing with? Right? So if I wanted to put it at 150, can somebody get 150 and buy a house that's better than mine? If the answer is no, you got yourself a good property. Maybe 150 is a little too low. Maybe you can go a little higher. We can play with those numbers at that point. Now, if you're looking at it and you're saying like, yeah, man, honestly, this house down the street is at 150 and it's probably comparable, then you want to be competitive. Maybe I don't put it at 150. Maybe I'll go down to 140, 145. Because my whole thing, even when I flip my houses, is speed. I want to sell fast. I don't want to be sitting on the market for months. Even with 7 months of inventory in San Antonio, we still sell our houses in 2 weeks. You understand? Because it's pricing it correctly so we can get our money back, make profit, and keep it moving. So it's the same concept. So let's say you're pulling in an area and you're like, John, I'm not finding any comps. Go wider. Because if somebody's looking for a property that's going to more or less compete with yours, they're looking for that price point. How far do you got to go before this property starts competing with something else? Go wider. Don't go further back in time because the market shifts, right? Especially right now, we're heading into the summer months. Home prices go up. Even in a bad market, home prices go up. So you are looking for comparables. You can't find any. Go wider until you find the next like property. The biggest things that we look for when we compare our properties is square footage, year built. Those things are primary, right? I don't want to compare a 1960s house with a 2005 home. Not the same, right? So you want to be within about 10, maybe 15 years of year built. If you really have to branch off that much. And if you're in an area where you have a property and you're like, John, I've gone out 2-3 miles and I'm not finding anything, you're probably in the wrong area. You should not be marketing in that area. You understand? Like if you can't find properties on the market in those areas, guess what? There's probably people that just, nothing's moving, right? Like there's just no demand there. So you don't want to be in an area where you can't find comparables. Remember, like, I teach pillar number 1, which is market analytics. The biggest thing you want to know is that you're in a market that's actually doing volume, right? That's actually moving product. If you're not in a market that's moving product, it's going to be that much harder for you to move it. I'll still move forward if there's a lot of need on the seller side, but my offer at that point is going to be much lower because I got a budget in there, this unknown of what the value of this house is going to be. And I'll show you a technique for that too. Which is actually my 4th point, right? So my 4th point is you got a property. You're just not quite sure if what the comps are going to be for this or what they are because the properties in the area, none of them match up. The property itself is an oddball property. Or what tends to happen a lot of times is where you need to be at and what the seller can't take anything less than is too, it's far apart, right? Maybe you need to be at 98, but the seller's like, I owe 115. This is just where I'm at. I owe 115. I can't take anything less than that, right? What we do at this point is a term called reverse wholesaling. You go to your buyers that want properties in that area, and you send them a link of all the pictures of this house, and you say, hey, on this property, can you come anywhere near, 145, 150, right? So you can at least nail the 115 the seller says. Always go up 20 to 30 grand from the number that they want. The reason for this, guys, is buyers are investors. Usually, unless you're giving them a sweetheart of a deal, they're going to negotiate with you. So you want to shoot a little higher. So that way, when they negotiate, there's room for movement, right? You don't want to start at exactly where you want to walk away with. Never start an offer where you want to walk away with, because it's just no buyers. They just don't do that. Some buyers, they're going to look at it and be like, yeah, I can pay that. And they just keep it simple. And the majority of them are always going to want a little discount, a little wiggle room, something. Shoot a little higher. But now you know for sure. Now if you send that property to your buyers and all your buyers are like, no, 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 don't take the no. Ask why. Ask why not. What don't you like about it? Where would you need this property to be at to make this a deal? Because a lot of times it's been actually hilarious when I have a buyer tell me, no, I can't do 145. I'm like, all right, well, what do you need it at? Man, if it was closer to 140, I'm like, dude, 140, come on. Yeah, let's go. I'll drop $5,000. It's okay. But very rarely does it happen where it's like, I need to be 100, right? It's always, it tends to be very tight. This is why I always like asking that question. They tell me no. Well, where would you need to be at to make this work? Such a powerful question. Now you have an actual number, if it's the only buyer you got, to actually go back to the seller and negotiate a lower price. And if you can't, guess what? That's not a deal, because you don't have a buyer for it. I give this example all the time of I had two students. It's 4 students. 2 students that they both came across the same deal at the same time. One of them walked away because he was barely going to make 10 grand on it. And the other one closed it at the same price, at the same asking price of the seller, and made $62,000 on it. The only difference between these 2 students was one of them had a better buyer. That was it. Nothing else changed in the deal. It was the buyer that was the difference. So again, it's not about ARV minus repairs, all those things, because it goes to my next point. ARV and repairs, in case you didn't know, they're 100% opinions. These are not facts. I don't care who the hell you are. You understand? I don't care how many decades of experience you think you have in this business. ARVs and repairs are a matter of opinion. Even appraisers, when they give you their appraised value, it's an opinion. It's not a fact. You understand? So when you interject your opinion of what the ARV or the repairs are, you are technically shooting yourself in the foot in case the buyer that you're sending it to has a whole different idea. I still, to this day, I have students that tell me, but John, this house needs a lot of rehab. I'm like, to you. There are some buyers that may not do that level of rehab. Ask me how I know. I had a property that, to me, it was easier to tear it down than to fix it up. To me. And I have flipped hundreds of houses. To me, that property was easier to tear it down than to fix it up. I got a buyer, bought it. He's like, to him, I asked him, I'm like, dude, I don't get it. What are you looking at? From 0 to 10, 10 being the best. Where does this fall? He's like, a 7. I think he was out of his mind, but he wasn't, because his strategy was different than mine. He does owner finance. So to him, he's like, oh, I just got to fix these little things, and then I'll sell it with financing, and they'll fix the rest. I'm like, dude, that's cool. Like, if you can make it work, that's cool for you. To me, it made no damn sense at all. But guess what? I'm not the buyer. So why do I need to make sense of it? You understand? Like, this is why so many of you are leaving so much money on the table. This is why so many of you can't do 6-figure wholesale deals. Why you can't do $40,000, $50,000 wholesale deals. Because you are putting your numbers in the way. Stop it. ARV, complete freaking opinion. I don't care who you are. Because until the house has been renovated and placed on the market in the time of year and everything, goes into account, that price might be different by $10, $15, even $20,000. And the same with the rehab. I know many, many investors. I used to do property tours in San Antonio where I would be flipping houses and I would take people with me, show them the whole rehab. And one particular house is about 1,400 square feet, 1,500 square feet. And they're like, how much you spend on this? We're like, well, right now we're about 55 grand all in. They're like, oh, okay, I have a similar house, so it's going to be about 55 grand. I was like, no, it was 55 grand for me. If you don't use my contractors, source the materials how I source them, manage the rehab how I manage, source the contractors how we source them, it might be 20 grand more, 20 grand less. You should never use another person's repair opinion for your properties, unless it's a contractor that you're actually going to hire to do the work. And even then, that's a little iffy. So when you are running your numbers, ARV and repairs are the ones that are shooting yourself in the foot every time you're trying to wholesale a deal. All you need is the as-is value. If you build your buyer's list correctly, again, watch last week's training. If you build your buyer's list correctly, your buyers are either buying from other wholesalers or from the MLS. They're going to pay that price that I told you to look for, or very close to it, because that's what the competition is doing. There's nothing else you can do. So instead of being like, John, I don't like it, I don't care, I'm telling you it works. We've done way too many deals this way. And my coach, he does about $500,000 a month, and he does the same exact strategy. He's like, I don't run values at all. I don't care what ARV is. I don't care what repairs are. I just look, if I was to take this house, put it on the market, what would it sell for? That's the value of that house. There's a little wiggle room in there, but that's about it. So I hope this is making sense. Now, how do you pitch it to your buyers? Again, we don't submit ARVs. We don't submit repairs. I don't submit comps. None of my opinions are included in this offer. When I submit this is the process that I go through with my buyers. For all of you that have dispo people that just love burning money, apparently. When you submit your offers to your buyer, all I do is send them a text. Be like, hey, man, you buying right now? Yes, I'm looking for property. Got it. I got a property in this area of town. You like that area? Oh, yeah, I love that area. Cool. When can I send you information for you to take a look at it? I'll be at my office in an hour. Why is that question crucial? What you don't want to do is send somebody the information and then be like this all day. Did he like it? Did he not? What did I do? Do I send it to another buyer? What am I doing? I don't know. Is this a good deal? It drives you nuts, and it kills the rest of the productivity for your day. So I want to ask them, when are they going to actually look at it, right? So when they tell me, oh, I can actually look at it right now, I'm in front of my computer. Cool. 3 things I send: the address, the price, and the link of the pictures. That's all I send them. If they're like, what do you think is the ARV? I don't know, dude. Get a realtor. Why? Because I don't want anybody buying any properties based on my numbers. Because what if I'm a little bit more aggressive than they are? What if I'm too conservative and they lose out the deal, or they buy it based on those numbers and they never get them? I'm on the hook for that. You understand? And it's like, those are my numbers. I know I can get those numbers. I don't know if you can. You understand? Because I don't know your skills. I don't know your contractors. I don't know how you manage your rehabs. So why would I put myself in that situation? How much work does it need? Dude, I sent you like 100 plus pictures. Check them out. Run your numbers. If you did, again, last week's training, if you did your job correctly with determining who your buyers are, any decent buyer can have a pretty good understanding of whether or not they're going to be able to get this deal done by the pictures. If it's a house of 1,000, 1,200 square feet, I take no less than 75 pictures. I don't hide a damn thing. Everything: yard, front of the house, side of the house, HVAC units, water heaters, attic, crawl space, the backyard, the roof. I take pictures of everything. I don't want anything on, that is not clear, because what I don't want is for them to walk the property and be like, dude, you completely didn't show me how the back of the house is falling apart, right? I don't want that shit, because it makes me look like an asshole. And then at the same time, it wastes both our times, right? So I take a ton of pictures. There's no such thing as too many pictures. I send them all. They should be able to determine whether or not that number is pretty good to them. And if they can't determine it, guess what? They're not a solid buyer for you. They may be a second tier, third tier buyer, somebody that, maybe they need to play around and get some contractors and get some bids out there because they don't, they're not quite familiar or they don't quite know what the hell they're doing. That's fine. But my VIP buyers, they better know. Because if not, I'm not sending you any properties. You're wasting my time. Right? That's all I send them. Now, when they get back to me, guess what they get back to me with? When can I go see it? Now, when they go see it, this deal is 99% done. That's it. It was 20-minute text conversation, and then I'll meet them at the property for them to walk it. That's all it took. Because once they go walk the property, because I send them plenty of pictures, they ran their numbers, they know the area, they know the values, they know where they need to be at. All they want to do is just lay eyes to make sure that I didn't miss something that was important in that situation. And once they see that, that's it. Done deal. We get the assignment signed right there on the spot. That's why I like to meet them out there. We get the assignment signed and we get moving. Now, for those of you that are making more than 30 grand, good job. But usually you don't get an assignment signed. You'll do a double closing is what we do. A lot of title companies, they do pass-through funding. So interview your title companies to make sure they offer that, which means that the buyer buys the property, and then you close with the seller all in the same day, but they use the funds from the buyer to pay off the seller and to give you the wholesale fee. So you don't got to come to the table with any transactional funds or anything like that. But that's pretty much the whole process. Like, this is how I give you a little bit more information in this training, just so I know there's a lot of questions that usually come up, but I wanted you to make sure that it's like, this is not difficult. Stop running ARVs and repairs unless you are the buyer. If you are the buyer, you have to run ARVs and repairs. You have to run your own repairs based on your contractor, not what some wholesaler told you repairs are. And you have to run your own ARVs based on what you feel you can sell that property for. They have to be your numbers, not somebody else's numbers. But if you're wholesaling, don't ever use your numbers. They will not do you any justice. So again, if you guys want and you want more coaching and training and accountability on these things, you can book a free strategy call with me at pwmcall.com, pwmcall.com. And you can set up a free strategy session with me, and we'll go over your whole business and what makes sense. But for right now, drop your comments. Let me know what questions you may have, what's not making sense, what's clear, where do you get stuck in your own business. I did have somebody that said they couldn't be on the live, but they sent the question in ahead of time. So his name is Todd, and he asked me, I'm getting started in real estate and I don't know where to start. And this is very common, right? You want to do real estate, you want to do wholesaling, but you're not sure where to start. My biggest advice to people like that is, if money is tight, it's not to buy courses or buy anything like that. The first thing I advise somebody that's just getting started in real estate and has really no idea of what to really do is attend as many networking events as you can possibly go to. If you can do one a week, do one a week. If you can do two a week, do two a week. Every city is different, so that might not be an option. But going to as many networking events as possible is by far one of the best things for you to start getting your feet wet and understanding how the market moves, how investors move, the language of real estate investing, what all these things are. Like, if I mention double closings and you're just like, what does that even mean? Then you need to get out there more, right? These are just regular things that are discussed at these events. So you want to get out to networking as much as possible. And when you do this, I would say 2 to 3 months in a row. One, you're going to stand out from everybody else, because most people, they'll go once, maybe twice a year to networking events. So if you're going 2-3 times in a row, now all of a sudden you stood out from everybody else. Find somebody that's doing what you want to do and see how you can bring them value. Maybe you are free labor for them. Maybe you make calls for them. Maybe you go visit properties. Figure it out. Bring them some value so you can start getting your feet wet in this whole process. And then from there, you're going to have a better understanding of what it is that you need, what do you want to do and what do you want to focus on. But if you're so new at this that you just don't even know what any of these things are, I would say, man, like you got to just get out there. You got to get out there and network. Get around the people you want to learn from. But yeah, don't jump into doing any type of real estate yourself yet, because you don't understand what the heck you're doing yet. So I hope that helps. All right. Looks like nobody has any questions. Apparently the training was very thorough and you guys understood everything that I explained. So I'm happy about that. You know, I try to get good at the way I train. That way it's like just so impactful that you're just like, man, I have no questions, John. It was so clear. With that being said, guys, I appreciate y'all for jumping on. We're going to do another poll this week to see what other trainings you guys want me to put together for next week. And for the foreseeable future, every Monday, we'll be going live at the same time, 1 p.m. Eastern, and doing the training. The biggest reason why I do this live, guys, and I just record the video and post it on YouTube, is for you to ask questions. It's easier for me to respond to all your questions like this rather than me having to type it up in a comment or something of the sort. So it's just a way for you guys to get, you know, more value, more help, and just kind of one-on-one coaching for free. So take advantage of it. You know, every Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern, any questions you may have, anything that you're stuck in, anything that's not making sense to you, anything that, you know, you just need help with, this is the time to do it. All right, guys. I appreciate y'all for jumping on, and I'll catch you all next week. Bye.